Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Friday, April 8th installment of the Silicon Insider, the only uncensored look at life and business in the Valley. My name is Mike Malone, and I'm here with special contributor Scott Budman, technology reporter for NBC Bay Area. Our producer is Jordan Henderson. Our East Coast correspondent is Bob Grove. And our host, as always, is the Silicon Valley Business Journal. Okay, Scott, well, we had other things lined up for the first topic today, but the news just took over. By the way, we're recording this on Thursday morning because Scott has to go back into trial, the Sunny Balwani trial tomorrow morning. So anyway, Elon Musk, we were going to talk about how he bought a fraction of the company, which we did last Friday, and then he was going to go on the board, and then he backed off because he decided that he might want to buy more shares. And there was speculation that he might go all the way in, and he just did.
Well, he made an offer, yes. And once again, Musk sucks the oxygen out of the rest of the tech world. And we have yet another company with serious boardroom drama. Elon Musk, as of Thursday morning, saying he would buy all of Twitter, take the company private. There would be a premium to the stock. So
$54.20 a share.
Right. So not a huge premium. And, in my guesstimation, probably not enough of what could have been a first offer. With Musk, you never know. He's already said this is my first and final offer, which puts even his stake and the price hike that brought in danger. But that's how Musk operates. Everything is sort of on a tightrope. And the latest we hear is that Thursday afternoon, the Twitter board will meet to discuss Musk's offer and either, accept it, which would be a bit of a surprise, honestly, or reject it. And there may be more back and forth. But again, things are wide open right now. Twitter is in play. You wonder if other sharks are possibly circling that boat right now. And it'll be interesting to see Twitter's reaction to the idea that as a company, it's now in play.
Well, except for other oligarchs, who would want Twitter? I mean, Twitter's not a real money-making enterprise. It's got some value, but, it's always been up and down. It's not really that profitable. It's always in some kind of trouble, on the national scene. And who else has that kind of money to burn as an individual?
Right. It's rare that we see individual hostile takeovers, right? I mean, they're usually another company, or a hedge fund or a VC fund, that sort of thing. This is one person. He is the richest person, so he's got the money to do it. And you're right about Twitter. I mean, one of the attractions, I imagine, to shareholders is that as a stock, Twitter hasn't performed all that well since going public because it hasn't unlocked whatever advertising value that a Google or a YouTube or a Facebook or, even a Snapchat has unlocked. And that's been a constant knock against the company. People look at it and say, hey, you are the most legitimate of social networks as far as getting information out, getting news out. When big events happen, people turn to Twitter. But day to day, advertisers don't seem to. And so we don't know if Musk is going to tell the board, hey, I can tap into that advertising value by perhaps making changes to how Twitter operates. But you just wonder if this is a move made to entice shareholders while possibly scaring employees and devotees of Twitter.
Yeah, well, the shareholders are in play. I mean, they could decide, why don't we cash out? This company is getting even more controversial. We can see if there's a Republican shift in November, which looks like there's going to be all hell's going to break loose on Twitter, along with Facebook. They're not happy at the prospect of Elon Musk. This employees, they may say, time for us to go, take our money and go. Shareholders may say this could be a time to get to cash out, because we're getting all this attention right now. And in many ways, if there's anybody suited for Twitter, if they're going to try to own it privately, it's probably Elon. Well, he's going to make it more interesting.
Right. You say that because he's going to make it more interesting. He's got the money. He's got the Twitter presence. He is one of Twitter's most notable presences, for better or for worse. He's tweeted about Tesla stock. He is the CEO of Tesla, very controversially, to the point where the SEC fined both him and Tesla. And, he uses Twitter as kind of a battering ram. So it's not surprising that he's taking that battering ram and now pointing it at the source itself. And that's one of the things that makes this all so meta and so interesting, is that it's not just Musk using Twitter to get at another company or a journalist or another target. He's starting to use Twitter to get Twitter.
Yeah, which is, it's such a 21st century move. I've enjoyed the reaction too. The Washington Post actually ran an editorial this week. Did you see that? Where somebody suggested we should never let oligarchs own important media companies. And it was like, hello?
Yeah, in the Washington Post.
Who
that
owns
horse
the
has left the
Washington
barn.
Post,
Right. That horse has left the barn. And that's in some ways how places like the Post are able to continue right now. The Bezos.
Without Bezos, there'd be no Post. Yeah.
It would be a lot different, right? And you could say that about, Mark Benioff going for a magazine, keeping that alive. And now there would be a Twitter without Elon Musk. But you saw the initial shareholder response was, whoa, this is really good for Twitter stock. It's interesting that as of Thursday morning, the price hasn't gone up to where Musk has offered, I think, because shareholders and Wall Street in general look at Musk with, they look at him with some awe and respect, and he's earned that, but also with a lot of skepticism, and he's certainly earned that too.
Well, he said it's his final offer. Do you buy that?
I mean, come on.
If
anybody else, I'd say no.
Twitter came back and said 60 billion. Do you really think that he would, just drop the whole thing over that small amount?
Right. No first offer is a last offer in this world, but Musk is Musk. He has the money and the wherewithal to move on to something else tomorrow if that's how it goes. But I don't think there's just one offer. That would be a very big surprise, given that it's a premium and a decent premium. But, Twitter has been higher. And I think investors are going to say this is not enough to completely remove the company and the stock from Wall Street.
Can the board of Twitter, if they don't want Elon, create enough barriers?
I mean, there are ways, and I don't know if you want to go into this, but sort of the poison pill of offering.
Yeah, absolutely. And the poison pill has been used in the history of Silicon Valley. I think National Semiconductor said, we will destroy ourselves before you buy us during the Charlie Spork era.
Right. Yeah. And you wonder if there are voices inside Twitter saying that. I'd love to be a fly on the wall of that meeting today.
I'd like to be in the lunchroom. I mean, there's got to be chaos all over that company. They've created a lifestyle, and they have power, and their censorship ability has given them power too. And it's all going to be stripped away, it seems, if Elon, the First Amendment absolutist, shows up.
Yeah, I mean, we reporters are hoping someone will live tweet it, but who knows? I'll let you know what I learn.
We'll follow your tweets. Okay. Electric vehicles. We talked about last time. I was already taking out the power grid in my corner of Sunnyvale. A lot of them are on the way, which is interesting. You know how when you hear about a car or you buy a new car and all of a sudden you see the same car everywhere? I have seen Ford 150 Lightnings, something that was as rare as, a white elephant. I saw 3 Lightnings yesterday, new ones, old ones. It's suddenly like all the F-150 Lightnings, the high performance version of their famous pickup truck, have come out of the garages to show off and display themselves in time for the big F-150 EV launch, which is April 26th.
Right.
What else is going on?
Well, I think that's a huge day. And I wonder if Ford, the EV companies and Tesla's famously had problems meeting deadlines, although there are now a whole lot of Teslas on the road. Rivian, the electric truck maker, is trickling trucks out. You're starting to see those. We're starting to see some of the Volvos and the Volkswagens, and that's nice. But so far, the EV movement has been slow, largely because it's hard to get your hands on cars. Ford is famous for cranking out vehicles, mostly the F-150, most popular.
Best-selling passenger vehicle, personal passenger vehicle in America.
Exactly. And from what I hear, Ford is saying that first line is already spoken for, the entire first line. Wow. So if they can get them out the door, it would be great to see a lot of those. Because again, this is a movement, I think, built not on advertising, but more word of mouth. People say, you can still fit your family into one of those Model 3s or whatever, and you don't have to put in gas. Sure, I'll do that. You can use the ID4, I think is the Volkswagen one, super solid SUV, and doesn't need gas. And trucks have, I think, a slightly higher bar to top because people like to use trucks for really aggressive things. But if Rivian and Ford can come out and show that their trucks are real trucks and better for the environment, that's going to be a big move, I think, in the EV movement.
Well, even more, the Lightning. I mean, that's not a throw plywood in the back of your pickup truck. The Lightning is basically do wheel stands on Stevens Creek. I mean, that thing is the piston powered one's what, 500-600 horsepower, and you can imagine what they're going to be able to do with an electric version.
Yeah, and that's what some of the tests have shown, that hey, this thing, you don't need to really accelerate. It's like flipping a switch. And I've been inside the Lightning, and it also feels really good. I think they're trying to get that side of the truck market, the truck market that also likes, maybe a big screen in the car and comfortable seats and some gadgetry. And I hope they don't overdo it, because some of these EVs, I think, have some technology for technology's sake that's a little bit distracting. But really, if you can prove to the truck user that this is a solid experience and a solid vehicle, why wouldn't they go electric?
Well, and I read some wild numbers yesterday in a motor vehicle publication. Mercedes has managed to reach some sort of record on distance with a battery powered car. It was several thousand miles or something. It was crazy.
I saw that. It was a lot more than what anybody gets yet, and that's great news, because I saw it and I thought,
especially for truckers.
Yes. And that is going to be a barrier, not just range, but also the ability to charge. So far, those charging stations, you see them, especially in an area like the Bay Area, where we're sick with charging stations, which is great. But it's hard if you're in, say, an apartment, or a condo complex. How are you going to charge? We need to make sure that these things are in these complexes so that people can charge when they need to. And, they don't have to make sort of an appointment to go stay in line somewhere. And that's going to be a gradual rollout. But we do have companies here in Silicon Valley and elsewhere, not to mention cities all across the country, that are starting to put those rules onto the books. Hey, we have to build out a charging network. And that's good news. But we still have quite a bit to go to make sure that everybody can charge when they need to.
Well, you have to get them out there in the interstate too. I mean, in western Nebraska, where there's nothing, that's going to be a challenge as well. Probably a governmental challenge.
I think
it's
so.
hard to see private industry, just like the interstate highway system. You didn't see asphalt companies building that. You saw the Eisenhower administration. So, okay. Up to now, Serrano's trial has been sort of the lead story of most of our conversations for the last 8 months. Finally, it's third. Okay, so it's moving down the chart. Tell me about the Sonny Balwani trial. How's it going? You gotta go tomorrow morning.
Right. It's really it's not getting the attention that Elizabeth Holmes got, and yet it's the same trial with many of the same witnesses. I think it's just a lower profile because Sonny Balwani has a lower profile than Elizabeth Holmes, and we've talked about this before. They're going after the same charges. They're trying to get perhaps a similar verdict. They were able to convict Holmes on 4 counts. And it's a very similar so far playbook that the prosecution is using. But it's just not as much a cause celeb.
It's not sexy. It's just not sexy.
Right.
You, in your note to me, you mentioned the dropout.
Yeah, that's yet another thing that these, and at the top of the show, we mentioned all the boardroom drama going on in Silicon Valley. You could spend a pretty decent chunk of your paycheck signing up for streaming services that are showing boardroom dramas in Silicon Valley. The Dropout is on Hulu. We've got the Uber one on Showtime. And what's the We Crashed, We Work. That's also very well done. That's over on Hulu. Really taking center stage right now on these streaming services, these really well done, high dollar. I mean, we've got some really famous actors involved and writers and directors to talk about Silicon Valley drama. And so it's yet one more thing, in addition to social media and books and documentaries, that this jury has to ignore. And if all their friends are talking about it, they have to say, can't talk about that.
No, the lead time on these productions is like a year or more. So is this a reaction to the success of Silicon Valley, the series, or did they see this stuff coming? Because they seem really prescient right now to have had these things hit the air just at the moment all this stuff is going on.
Yeah, and actually, I want to give a shout out to some journalists. I mean, John Carreyrou of the Wall Street Journal wrote Bad Blood even before the Holmes trial. And that was sort of, you could tell, the playbook for, The Dropout, which was a podcast, and then now the series. Mike Isaac of the New York Times wrote a really good book called Super Pumped about Uber. That's literally what the show is called right now on Showtime. So these are people who put themselves into the trenches covering the, Elizabeth Holmes and Travis Kalanick's, and wrote books, and then they were made into screenplays. And as so many of us are still streaming things at home, this is catnip for the Showtimes and Hulus of the world. And I don't obviously know the ratings of these things, but a lot of people are talking about them. So I would guess money is being made, and therefore we're going to see more. And that's what I was sort of thinking driving into work today about the Hulu Musk thing. Musk has got to be ripe for one of these things, and maybe Hulu's in there too, but I'll bet the Tesla story is coming. And there have already been a couple of books written about Tesla.
We should do a shout out to one of our listeners, Tom Hayes, Valley veteran from Applied Materials, an old friend of ours. He's down at Paramount Studios in Hollywood. Maybe he could drop us a note and tell us what's going on down there about green lighting all these productions. I'd love to hear from him, hear what he has to say.
There are probably going to be more. Yeah. Let us know, Tom.
Inflation. This should have been the big news of the week, but Elon obviously sucked all the air out of the room. Unbelievable. Wholesale inflation hits an all-time record high of 11.2%. Cost of vegetables soared 82%. Grains jumped 40%, and which means that consumer prices are going to get jacked up even further. And if you go to a supermarket, especially the box stores, there's entire shelves that have been emptied of goods. We haven't seen anything like this in a long time. And now we're heading into brand new territory, even worse than, the Carter malaise and all of that, the stagflation.
Right. I mean, you have sort of a double whammy of inflation, rising prices, and still some supply chain issues for various reasons, keeping some of the items off shelves. So you also have some scarcity, and that's a hard 1-2 punch that raises prices even more. I mean, look at trying to get a car right now, or even a used car. Those prices are up some 30-40%. And food, you and I see it at the supermarket, but the restaurants also see it. So going out is more expensive. So it all really, domino effects.
I ordered a pizza last night. I was astounded how expensive that was. And that's, one of the basic, consumer goods in a modern American life. So
think about it.
Gas prices seem to have stabilized a little bit, but the administration seems to be suggesting that they're not going to be able to make it better before the end of the year. That inflation, unless they do a Reagan and just pull the string and collapse the economy, it's going to get worse for the next 6 months.
Well, we're in an election year, and it seems like we always are. And, we got the midterms coming up, and not to get too political, but inflation is bad for your political chances, but collapsing the government may even be worse. So I don't know if we're going to see a huge rise in interest rates. I think the Federal Reserve getting involved and saying, hey, we're going to gradually raise rates to get us out of this is the mature way to do it. But, there's real time and being patient time. And then there's political time, which is we have to show some results now. And that's why you're seeing, gas rebates and, opening up the pumps and all this stuff. Those are sort of quick hit fixes. But I think the gradual interest rate rise that the Fed is planning is probably what's going to eventually get us out of this.
Milton Friedman always said inflation is it's a fiscal problem. It's not about goods and services. It's about the flow of money.
Right. But there are goods and services that are, in scarce demand, partially because of supply chain issues. Also because, you mentioned grains, a lot of that comes from Ukraine and we know what's going on there. So This is going to take a while because you got a whole lot of things happening at the same time, and none of them are helping. They're all hurting.
Right. Okay. A bit of good news on that front. Silicon Valley office vacancy rates have improved for the first time since COVID hit. So the first time in 3 years, all of a sudden offices are beginning to fill up again in San Jose. Are you seeing that down there?
Yeah. And it's seen mainly because traffic is coming back to Silicon Valley.
Yes, I've noticed that.
Yeah. And it's almost like, we all know which exits people take if they're Apple employees or if they work at Google. And you can really see on the dates, when Apple said April 11th or, Google said whatever, you could see that traffic is starting to back up already at those very specific exits. And so we're starting to see, it's like, the opposite of nature healing. It's whatever corporate healing, but you're starting to see more cars and you're starting to see more people. And it seems that the companies are trying to do this gradually, but they're really trying to do it. You're starting to see less of a, hey, do whatever you want kind of attitude and more of a, we want to see you in person attitude. And it'll be interesting to see how that works at some of these companies where it worked without being in the office and people knew that.
I got stuck getting on an on-ramp in South San Jose. And I was furious. And I went, oh, wait a minute. This is the way it's supposed to be. I remember this. You've gotten so jaded about just whipping down the freeway at 3:30 in the afternoon. Well, I won't admit that I was going 80 miles an hour, but the potential to go 80 miles an hour was like, wow. I think when the traffic jams return, the frustration is going to be even greater because we had this 3-year hiatus from, crazy Silicon Valley traffic. We're going to see a lot of road rage coming up, I think.
Well, we'll see. I mean, people are gradually coming back, and I'm curious what that means. That's good news for a lot of the coffee shops and restaurants in the area that are really dependent on tech. So as big business comes back, small business is breathing a sigh of relief, I think.
Oh, I hope so, and good for them. Okay, Google has announced that is doing $9.5 billion in expansion, and California is going to be a major part of that. And well, what that suggests, Mountain View and San Jose is likely places for even more expansion. So that says good things about the economy of Silicon Valley, at least in the years ahead.
Right. Google, among other companies, is not saying, hey, the work from home works so much, we're just going to stop building. They're still building, they're still developing, they're still planning to grow. And you're right, it's good for the economy. I know one of the concerns that's really paramount down here in the South Bay and Silicon Valley is housing. And that always comes up at these meetings and when these announcements are made. Hey, what about places for these people to live? And so that's something that there's the constant back and forth on.
Well, I'm seeing an awful lot of building. So it's very possible that we can't absorb it all. Obviously, the valley is going to start spreading out over the hills and companies are going to leave, but it is looking a little better around here. And right. I noticed an awful lot of, literally every house in my neighborhood is being worked on right now, which suggests that people are not planning to move. They're infilling, they're improving their current situation, they're sticking around. So if that's a leading indicator of the future of the valley, it's a good sign. Okay, does your wife or you ever use Etsy?
So actually, I have a daughter who's quite active on Etsy because she loves the arts and craft aspect of it. And I know a lot of people who use it.
Grove sent me this. Did you know there was a protest at Etsy? Yes. 17, they're sort of creating a union, the users, the operators, and 17,000 people had a strike. They shut down for a day because Etsy raised its rate of, 4% to 5.5% or something like, 5% to 6.5% effective last Monday. So, we've seen this before. I don't know if you remember this, but eBay changed its rules at one time. And, every time you have one of these million people, army of David's businesses, if you change the rules slightly, all hell breaks loose. And Etsy says they're going to use it for marketing and that sort of thing. But I suspect it's also inflation as well. But Etsy users are not happy. You know,
well, you call them an army of Davids, and that's true. But on the other hand, like eBay, Etsy is a publicly traded company. So they answer to shareholders. And the idea of sort of hey, we've got a great art culture here, let's build things and sell them and have a really nice commune sort of feeling clashes against, hey, we also have to please Wall Street. And Etsy is going through that right now. You add in the sort of, union fever that's sort of gripping a lot of these tech companies. And I think you're going to have some boardroom battles. Again, I don't know if Hulu is, right now eyeing Etsy for its next show, but this is a really interesting thing. You also see it on the App Store for Apple and Android and things like that. How much to pay them versus how much to please Wall Street. Hello, Spotify, for example, with artists. And Etsy is going through that. And Etsy really has this cool, hip culture. But again, it also answers to Wall Street. And that's a clash right there.
I was thinking about this. If they ever actually have a physical strike, they will have the best looking signs.
Yes, that's true.
With glitter and beautifully rendered on burnt wood, it'll be spectacular. All right, finally, I haven't seen a headlight like this in a while. A Silicon Valley chip company is going public. The company is Ampere Computing LLC and has announced Monday that it has filed confidentially for an initial public offering. When was the last time you saw a chip company in first of all, a new chip company, and then a new chip company in Silicon Valley, and then a new chip company in Silicon Valley going public? And it's run by Renee James, who used to be the president of Intel. So she's got the chops. She's got the chops, obviously, in the record. But it's kind of cool to see that again.
Yeah, well, so we haven't seen a lot of chip companies IPO, and I think it's because we haven't seen a lot of new chip companies. But look at the Wall Street performance lately of advanced micro devices, NVIDIA, even the chip makers, Applied Materials. You mentioned that earlier. These are companies that have really seen a renaissance on Wall Street because...
So she's making her move at the right time. Absolutely.
Right. I mean, there's a shortage. They're needed. The prices are in there. It's probably a good time to do that. And it hasn't been for a while because there was always this sort of, chips, they're just commodities. They're not sexy anymore. But tell that to an NVIDIA shareholder. I mean, right now, that's really where a lot of the focus is because everybody needs so many chips.
Yeah, but I think it's great they're doing this, and that's great there's this company, but we have a fab problem. So if you're a new chip company, you are sending that out to get built, your chips out to get your designs get built somewhere else.
Right.
Where's she going to get all her stuff built? I mean, you can't raise enough money in an IPO to build a fab because they're $10 billion a piece.
I imagine you outsource that.
Yeah, but where? Taiwan, Malaysia,
some fabs that Intel wants to build here eventually. Obviously, she's got a relationship with Intel, maybe partner with them. But I wonder if the fab building is true. But fab building, unless you're Intel, unless you're that gigantic, maybe a thing of the past. Partnering with already built fab facilities may be the way to go.
Well, we'll see. Good luck to her. I hope it works. I'd love to see another chip company here. You know how I feel about chips. So they're the heart of, they're the center of everything. Okay, that's it for now, folks. You can find us on the Silicon Valley Business Journal homepage, as well as on Spotify, Anchor, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, I'm reading this, YouTube, and LinkedIn. And of course, we're in video now. Have a great weekend and get your taxes in. See you next week. Bye-bye.